The tenant just burnt the unit down? Yes, that happened, my friends. Also, the Ontario government just said they are investing $6.5 million into the LTB to hire more adjudicators. Is that a good thing? Well, we're going to find out right after the intro with our favorite paralegal, Bida Delisi. Well, my good friends, as promised, here's our good friend and paralegal Bida from Stonegate Legal, and we love her stories. We also love Bida, the experience that you bring to the table. How are you doing this week?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am doing excellent. The leaves are coming out of the trees. I feel spring is here. Summer's around the corner. Things are looking up. So all good on our front. So, Bida, I love the stories that you get to share. What do you got for us this week from that unique landlord ownership standpoint? What's going on in your world this week?
Well, Gary, on this week's Realty Chatter, we have had a landlord light a match and burn down a rental unit. Wow. It was so bad that there's not even you can't even find a fork that looks like a fork. Yeah, is so let me give you a little bit of a background. That a landlord and tenant relationship, they always butted heads. The tenant stopped paying, and the landlord basically told him that he was going to lock him out. And I guess the landlord wasn't thinking when he said that, and it kind of peed off the tenant. And the tenant said, "Here's a match, and there goes your unit, up in flames."
Wow.
The tenant did not have insurance either.
So it was the tenant that started the fire? Is that what we're saying here?
Yeah. The fire was started by a match from a matchbox. And
old school.
Old school. Light a match, right in, like the fire I guess they call him the fire marshal. They found the match. They found the lit match.
Really?
But that, I mean, we laugh about it because it's something that you don't hear every day. But if you put yourself in the position of that landlord and you've saved, the majority of your hard-earned after-tax dollars to invest in a property only to see it go up in flames, it's very disheartening.
Yeah, that's nuts. I know
Right?
many years ago, one of my dad's rental properties, 3 or 4 units that he owned with a partner or two, the whole thing went up. I've come to think of it, he's had 2 go up in flames, and both we rebuilt. One actually was one of my first summer jobs ever, as I was 15 or 16. And I got to learn how to swing a hammer. But man, here's the reality of it. Like, we've had some units have some damage and so far in the past. And I know a bit of you still got to pay your mortgage payments.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's bigger things here than just a unit burning up and not being able to get income on. Like, there's still other expenses that happen to that, right?
Yeah, your property taxes, your mortgage payments, anything that was not included in your insurance policy. All of these are, guess who's paying for them is the landlord.
Yeah. And Ben and I have these conversations, not to scare people, but to educate people. When you buy an investment as big as a house, there's pros and there's cons and there's hurdles, and we like talking about those hurdles. But with people like Bida, we're able to get over and around those hurdles, and it's just a matter of having your eyes wide open. If fires can happen, and they happen more often than I think we want to believe, right?
Yeah, and it's a risk, right? It's a risk. And I always tell landlords, whether you're new landlords, whether you're realtors, anytime you purchase real estate for the purpose of rental income, you're taking on a risk. It's not just, what if my tenant stops paying? And non-payment is not just a risk. There's damages, there's extensive damages, there's fires, there's so many risks. But even with all this risk, Gary, it's still the best investment.
Yeah. Wholeheartedly agree. Wholeheartedly agree. We can talk about that in future videos. It really is. There's risk and there's reward and everything that goes along with that. When you have great people on your team like Bida and others that we're certainly talking about over the videos, it becomes a lot easier. Or our job, really, as an investor and as a realtor, and your job as a paralegal and an advisor, is to mitigate as much as we possibly can. Mitigate the risk is what I'm saying,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. I mean, it happens. You just have to be prepared for something to happen. I mean, not
yeah,
everybody's prepared for a fire, right? Um, but that that teaches the landlord, for those landlords who don't want to get insurance, that it is very important that you get insurance
yeah,
on your rental properties.
yeah,
I know some landlords who say, you know what, I'm not going to get insurance. For what? It's a waste of money. Well, until someone lights a match to your property, then
yeah.
it's not a waste of money.
Until you need it. And there's probably a whole day's worth of workshops and everything that you and I can talk
Yeah,
about. There's home insurance for your residential home where you and I would live. And then there's property investment insurance. And those are, my friends, those are two different things. And if you want to have questions
yeah,
about insurance, I'm sure reach out to either one of us. Make sure you're asking the right questions of your insurance broker for sure. So interesting news
absolutely.
over the last week or two, Bida. They, we always seem to be coming up with the landlord tenant board and adjudicators, and the backlog, especially over the last couple of years, the backlog is incredible. And yet we've seen some good news, but there's some twists that come with it. The good news is, yes, the Ontario government is investing $6.5 million into that. However, to hire more adjudicators, that is to reduce that backlog. But you had a great point, Vita. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the Ontario government is injecting $6.5 million into hiring new adjudicators to work through the backlog of the landlord and tenant board. But here's the problem. Many of those adjudicators don't have any legal backing. They don't have a legal background. Some of them are former sports
Athletes.
players,
Yeah.
athletes. Thank you. I couldn't find that word. Others, they don't have. They only just have their bachelor degrees. But here's the problem: there's so many other factors around these adjudicators when they're making a decision that, in my opinion, it's important that they know or they have some type of legal backing, because then they're just making a decision based on just whatever they feel is right.
Yeah.
And here's another problem: is what if they are a tenant? What if they are a landlord? What if there's a biased decision? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, that can also affect their decision as well.
And it definitely being in going to the hearings and everything
Yeah.
like that, that you can definitely see the adjudicators. And I've been there many times, not as experienced as you, and you're the professional that goes on our behalf now. There are, like in anything, the cream rises to there's adjudicators that
Yeah.
they've got their stuff together. And then there's adjudicators like, man, I wish I had the person from last week, you know? Um,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and
There's adjudicators, Gary. I mean, believe it or not, even when I'm on hearings, once I have that adjudicator, I already know that adjudicator is very tenant friendly.
mhm.
Like, we have a bulletproof case, but that they're just very tenant friendly. They'll find some loophole around what we have,
Yeah. And
right?
that loophole bit, I mean, we're going to talk about this in future videos. It doesn't need to be big, big. It can be the smallest thing. And all of a sudden you're back at
That's
square
right.
one. You know what? And that's a great thing. We
That's
should
right.
probably talk about that on the next or on a future video, is how to prepare what you need, and just all the preparedness that you come to the table with when you go to the hearings. But you're right. Circling back to the backlog. Yes, Ontario understands it has a problem. Understand, because
Yeah.
it's in some cases, let's be frank, it's a problem for the tenant as well. But of course, in our situation, mostly it's a problem for the landlord, the owner. The backlog is
Absolutely.
incredible. And
It's incredible. It's incredible. Can we also talk about the new amendments to the Residential Tenancies Act? That is
yeah,
very important too. I mean, um, there's a bill that is in the works, I would say. It's called Bill 97. These are going to be recent changes, recent amendments that are going to be happening with respect to the Residential Tenancies Act. More so when it comes to no fault evictions like the N12 and the N13. What I mean by no fault evictions, meaning that the landlord is pursuing an eviction, but the tenant hasn't triggered it. That means, the landlord wants to move in, or they've sold the property, or the landlord wants to do extensive renovations or repairs or conversions, whatever the case is. There's going to be an increase of fines. Now, fines for individuals are as high as 100,000, and for corporations as high as 500,000. And I always say at the beginning, the early newborn stages of when these changes come into effect, the board is looking to make an example out of you. So those landlords that think they're so smart, I'm just going to deceive the tenant. Guess what? If a tenant, it only takes one angry tenant
yeah.
to file, and if there's no case law, guess what? The board is looking to make examples. So be really, really careful when these changes come into effect.
Yeah. And we are seeing a lot of that from the listing side in a sense. We need this unit vacant, and they're going to buy it. Well, we'll just say we're moving in. Oh boy. The red lights and everything else should go up at that point.
Yeah.
And if you're a fellow colleague or realtor out there, have those tough conversations. You're a paralegal like Bitta, have those tough conversations with that owner, a potential owner, because that is a can of worms you do not want to open, right?
Yeah, you want to stay away from that, especially if there was talks of, if you don't pay a $500 increase, I have no choice but to sell it. And then you slam the tenant with an N12 because you're going to be moving in. Well, guess what? If you've put all that stuff in a text message or an email, guess what the tenant is going to use against you at the board,
Mm-hmm.
right? That text message. So be very, very careful. I always tell my landlords, keep it simple, keep it short. That way they can't use it against you at the board.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well said. So lots going on. I love our talks because I always learn a little bit. I think I'm very confident in my landlord abilities, but I do know what I don't know, and I always love learning even just little tidbits and everything from you every week. Looking forward to our future conversations today's call, man. Make sure you've got your proper insurance,
Yes.
and really what that's obviously our relationships with landlord and tenants it can be at some cases a murky one, we'll call it like that. And if you feel like it's getting murky or out of hand, that's when you need to take a step back and talk to people like Bitta, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Don't be afraid to reach out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And don't guess what to do, because sometimes your guess is not correct,
Yeah, yeah, that's a great.
right?
Never guess what to do. Go ask it and get insightful and
Yes.
yeah, the best response is a question, and the question usually is directed to Bitta. So Bitta, how do people get a hold of you?
Well, email is by far the best way to get a hold of me, and that's info@stonegatelegalservices.ca. Always check out the website, our contact information, lots of great information there, stonegatelegalservices.ca. Or they can call our office, and you may not always get me at the office, but you will get my powerhouse paralegals. They were always here to assist you. And Gary will put up the number for that, right?
Yeah, right here, right wherever on the screen
Awesome,
is.
right here.
And you know what I gotta say? Follow Stonegate on Instagram. Great little insight videos, short videos. Just I love it. But keep up that great work. You're educating
Thank
the
you.
industry. It's amazing. So for Bitta, and I'm Gary. That's our video. We'll see everybody on the next one. Bye for now.